I'm convinced there is, if you're an LBL, there's always something watching you.
We found a trail of bones leading from down here all the way up to that water pumping station.
Most prominent thing I've had happen to me down here was getting bluff charged.
So that's part of that weird thing about the LBL is you go to a location, you talk about it or put it out there, and then you come back and all the evidence is gone.
It was in May of 2020, and we'd just gotten a boat. So I'd saved for years for a nice boat. And so it was my wife and I don't know, my daughter, my middle daughter was 3 or 4, and we just had my infant daughter. And we had been out the day before, and it was so nice. And then it actually kind of, the next day we wanted to go out again. Man, it was rough. So we went to a little spot where I knew the wind would at least not be battering us, and we're just gonna eat and fish on the bank. You know, COVID was going on, there was a lot of people out, but we had come down this road and there wasn't anybody there, about 2 miles getting in there. I was cooking hot dogs and I had my back to a ridge. We had beached the boat, and I thought I heard some people walking, and I had told them just to be careful and look and see, you know, if somebody's gonna come down on us. Nothing came of it. We ate the hot dogs, and I was getting ready to push the boat off. My oldest daughter said, you know, what do you think happened to those people? And I said, I don't know. Maybe they just went the other way or something. But we were about ready to get the boat out, and we heard a knock. My oldest daughter said, what was that, Dad? What does that? Are there people up there? And I said, I don't know. I guess Bigfoot does that. And I looked down, there just was a stick, and we'd been tied up to a tree. So I knocked on the tree about 100 yards this way. We immediately hear another knock. And we're still laughing about it, man. We're thinking, okay, there's some kids up there. Like I say, it's COVID, everybody's out there, some kids messing with us. So instead of going on, we were gonna go back to the boat ramp. I wanted to go around here and check it out. And I drew a picture of it. I looked up in the trees and I said, holy, there's Bigfoot. It was just standing there. I mean, it was just, there was a spot coming down where the sun was illuminating the tree. You know, you gravitated to that spot if you were looking up on the ridge, and it was probably just about 8 feet tall, but they couldn't get through a door, man. They're huge. So, I mean, 4 feet, at least 4 feet, probably more, across at the shoulders. The one I saw was. Yeah, I mean, it was clear. It was, the sun was shining right on it, and you know, immediately I even noticed how the hair reacted to the light. You know, when the sun was hitting, it was almost blonde, just like hair, you know, and then it was darker brown as it went in. So the eyes are really deep set, and that stands out also. They're back in there. Nose was more human-like than ape-like. It was hairy, but there was a space where there was a face, where you could see skin, textured skin. You know, and again, I drew a picture of it. That's what helps me remember. I saw the hand real well when it came down there. Man, and I'm trying to get my wife to see it, and it went this way, and I'm spinning the boat. We got real close to the bank, and I was turning, and I turned one way, and then it went the other way, and I couldn't ever get them to see it. It was so fast, and it moved down into a little ravine. And I mean, I saw its hand. I just got such a good look at it. My girls saw the tree shaking, and then I wasn't scared, I was shocked, you know, because now I realized I'm gonna have to rethink what I thought of the woods my whole life, and I'm going through that, and we're drifting down the bank, and I'm like, all right, let's just go back, and as soon as I hit the motor, my wife and my oldest daughter looked at each other. They heard they described it as a guttural, frustrated scream. And my ears ring all the time. I've got what's called tinnitus. So the boat was going, and they were on this side, and the bank was over there. But when they heard that, my wife we're gone. Because I had kind of thought maybe we'll just go to a different bay and fish out. Big fisherman, like I said. But she said, we're out of here. And she was actually worried because we were only, I don't know, 60, 70 yards from the truck. And she was actually thinking, this thing's going to chase us around maybe. You know, you go through that do I wish I had never seen this phase? But then you also, it's amazing. It's amazing. So I'm convinced there is, if you're an LBL, there's always something watching you.
Deep in the center of the continental United States is a land shrouded in mystery. Harbored feelings of resentment towards a government that all but abandoned the land after promises of a brighter future dwell here, giving emotional weight to the nocturnal beasts that reportedly dwell here. This is the land between the lakes, residing on the border of Kentucky and Tennessee, a national recreation area covering over 170,000 acres of land. This large territory, located between Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley, was once known as the land between the rivers, until the 1930s, when the Tennessee Valley Authority transformed the area with large dams to generate hydroelectric power. Now, the area is an undeveloped rural region with very little human activity, allowing for a variety of wildlife.
Black bears, we have elk, we have a bison. The elk and the bison are actually in their own little compounds they have.
So down here in Land Between the Lakes, you'll quickly notice an abundance of deer. You'll almost hit them as they cross the road. You'll see them standing in the fields. And recently there's kind of been what seems to be an uptick in the wild boar, because even just a couple of nights ago when we were driving down the road, we almost hit a big one in the road, and then there's one on the side of the road. You'll have rattlesnakes, copperheads, water moccasins, there's foxes. The park will tell you there's no red wolves, but I've personally seen red wolves standing out in a field, so that they're here. Plenty of coyote, you'll hear them hollering all the time. A lot of birds like owls and, you know, the basic animals like that, raccoons, possums, armadillos. But definitely Dogman and Sasquatch, that's my favorite one.
The most infamous supposed inhabitant of the LBL is the Dogman, a humanoid creature sporting large claws and a canine-like head and fangs, said to prowl the LBL day and night in search of potential victims. In recent years, a notorious story has been floated about the alleged LBL massacre, which purports to be an incident in which a Dogman murdered an entire family at a campsite somewhere in the LBL. Overshadowed by this sensational story are the reports of Sasquatch occupying the same area.
Well, LBL has a history of Dogman sightings, of course. It also has a history of Bigfoot sightings as well. I took a few reports from witnesses that saw a Bigfoot, like Mike, the gentleman you spoke to. Very credible witnesses. Actually, some of these witnesses that come forward, they have everything to lose and nothing to gain. Mike, for example, works at a high school, athletic director. Think about going on camera and then telling people he saw a Bigfoot, going back to school Monday and having his peers or his students ridicule him, but he's confident enough to come out and say, yes, I saw this creature. The same thing with the Dogman reports down there. People now go on camera and admit they saw this creature with a large muzzle, pointed ears, which is different than a Bigfoot. Bigfoots might have some prognathism, but typically they're flat-faced, no ears, wide shoulders. It's a different creature. Bigfoots, I can tell you, I believe they're a yet-to-be-classified hominid. A dogman could be paranormal, supernatural. It could be a different entity altogether. But we do have credible witnesses at LBL that have seen dogmen and also Bigfoot.
The wilderness of the land betwixt the lakes is by no means an accident. During the Great Depression, President Franklin D. Roosevelt established the Tennessee Valley Authority, or TVA, as part of the New Deal, a plethora of government programs meant to stimulate an economy at its lowest ebb. The TVA's purpose was to provide navigation, flood control, and electricity generation to the Tennessee Valley, creating jobs in that region and providing power to a large swath of the United States that did not have it yet. After the Depression, the TVA continued its work as an economic developer of the Tennessee Valley. After enforcing unpopular procedures to develop the land between the rivers in the 1960s, the TVA began to be resented by the people it was created to help.
TVA built these dams to bring hydroelectric power to rural Tennessee. TVA are the ones that actually ran everybody off the land. They eminent domain the whole place. John F. Kennedy signed the bill for it, and they took all of the land from, it was 900 families lived on the peninsula, and they were all kicked off the land and removed from it. And the promise was that there was going to be outdoor recreation and prosperity that came with the LBL turning into a national recreation area. None of that materialized. A few campgrounds opened, but all of this land has just been left to rot after all of these years. And it never really came to what it was supposed to come to. They did have a bunch of work camps out here. We're not entirely sure what they were doing at these work camps either, because they never built anything. They just had these work camps out here with people at them working, environmental monitoring stations, but what did they do? What did they build? What did they move? There's really no evidence that anything like that was done. So that's kind of a mystery within itself of why did they kick these people off the land and basically quarantine it in a way and just let it go to rot.
We were out here in one section, we found an old home, pretty well preserved, you know. We walk up, we look at it, and I'm like, man, this is somebody's home. This was somebody's land that they were just removed from. And then we go a couple hundred yards in, and we find where people are just dumping trash, like garbage and all that. It's up near the edge of the peninsula. And we were just like, man, these people got kicked off their property, and then nothing was done with it. And now it's just basically turned into a garbage dump, at least this one section of it. And there's hunting that takes place here. There is some outdoor recreation, but it's never been developed to the level that they promised originally.
And there's a lot of anger in the local communities about that. There's people, because this was going to be their land, their legacy. This was going to be handed down through families. That's generational wealth that has been taken away from a whole swath of people around here. This is not an economically, prosperous place. And everything that these people had was completely taken from them without any sort of recompense for it.
They ran everybody out. They moved the cemeteries. They relocated a lot of them. There's still a couple places that I know in Kentucky Lake where there's some tombstones that didn't get moved. The cemeteries are underwater most of the year. No, road beds that are actually all underwater because they just put those dams up and flooded them. So you find remnants of like the 20s, the 30s. It's really cool. When you get out there, you'll find the barbed wire fences, the old roads. So you can see the remnants of the community, but it was very rugged, and I think that's kind of why they went, the moonshiners stayed there. There's lots of places to hide. I don't know for sure. I'm gonna say that they sectioned off that area, and I think they could figure when they flooded the exact area it was gonna leave. Now, a lot of the places, probably the people could have stayed because their houses were high enough up that they wouldn't have been flooded. But I think then you get into, why does this guy get to stay and this guy not. So I'm just going to say they displaced everybody because they calculated how high the water would come. It would leave this land. They just drew a line and said, everybody north of this, we're going to buy you out and you're gone. There's, you know, local stories of skirmishes and people that didn't want to go peacefully. Like I say, there were some holdouts. But my thing was when I came here, there's people still living in LBL. There's wild men. Don't go out by yourself, because it was, but they didn't connect it to Bigfoot or dogmen or anything spooky. It was people that didn't want to leave when they were, you know, so that was still fresh, you know, because you got to think, I think the last ones were out in the 40s. And so it was only 40 years. You know, when you're a teenager and you're young, you don't, you know, 40 years seems like forever, but now at 51, I'm like, 40 years is no time. So there were still people that were connected to it.
They say they were forming this recreation area, you know. It caused a lot of people lost property. Even down south, there's a town called New Johnsonville. It used to be Johnsonville, and it's completely underwater now. And there's probably several little communities that along the river now that are underwater, you know. They say that sometimes at low water you can actually see, you know, tips of some of the structures, you know, still sticking out, you know.
The Tennessee Valley Authority had it for a while, then it was turned over to the Forest Service, which runs it now for the Department of Agriculture. And people were under the impression that all of a sudden things were going to change, that the Forest Service was going to do a lot with it. Well, it got worse. The budget got cut. And it's weird, you'll go around the LBL and there's areas like this that are just like literally collapsing, you know. This is probably not a very safe building for us to be standing in, but they don't do anything with it, they just leave it. But then you go into some of the other areas that are associated with some of the supernatural or cryptid activity and they've been just completely leveled at that point. They brought in men and equipment.
They took a lot of time, effort, and money to basically erase these off of the face of the planet.
And when they're questioned about it, they just go, well, it's a safety concern. The buildings are unsafe. And we're going, this is pretty much the definition of an unsafe building. You know, you let this one stay, but the ones that are in proximity to some of the more aggressive encounters that people have had here, those are mysteriously just leveled at that point. So.
And blocked off.
Mm-hmm.
I know one lady that when they kicked the people off the land out here, there was over 800 families that got kicked off. And she was a part of it. Her grandmother was living here at the time, and they were here for generations on generations. And it really left a bad taste in their mouth.
I mean, there's still resentment. I think every once in a while it comes up that the government's going to sell some of this or allow it to be logged, and that's when the resentment comes up. You know, there's still tons of cemeteries. They still let you bury, you know, you still bury people there. So there's funerals every day and people that are buried in there are still their family cemetery. I think they're good, but yes, to answer your question, they are still sour and bitter, and if anybody talks about doing anything to it or selling it, that comes right back. So.
Since its effective abandonment by the United States government, various structures intended for both recreation and government use have been left unattended, creating a sort of post-apocalyptic aura throughout the LBL.
We call this area Station 16. It's an old TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority work camp. We stumbled across it a couple years ago now. We had gotten emails from two different people that actually worked barges on the lakes that reported seeing basically big, tall, you know, extremely dark figures down on the shoreline through here. One guy had said that he had reported it to the actual barge captain, and he was like, oh, they're just bears, don't worry about it. And he was like, I've grown up in this area, you know, I know what black bear look like. They're walking upright with no problem. They're larger than black bears. And they would usually see them along the shoreline during the day and then down into dusk and all of that. So after the second report, we decided to come check this part of the peninsula out, and then stumbled across this collection of old buildings back through here.
So there's materials in here that show that it was TVA run, that it was like a part of the TVA system. There's these maintenance shed kind of dotted all over the peninsula. There's another large one over there we can kind of take a look at as well. But there's a trash can in there that's labeled TVA, and then there is the mattresses from the bunks in there from when they had a TVA work camp here.
Now we were here one night filming, and we're using like a night vision camera, okay? And we kind of come through into here, and we're looking around, and there's a knot hole in one of the walls here
I think I was filming, or you were filming. We're standing right here, filming in here with a full spectrum camera, and eye shine came through that knot hole
Right through this
there.
knot hole. So you see eye shine come through this really briefly, and then something moves back off. And it filled pretty much the entire knot hole. Elijah Henderson, who you've spoken to as well, actually watched the footage and got in touch with me, and he goes, you know, something was looking at you through this wall here. And I'm like, yeah, we saw it, we just don't know what it was. So again, that's not very tall, but that's a big knot hole. Whatever it was had a pretty good sized eye that was peeking through.
And was
us
looking
essentially.
through a hole at us, like
Yeah.
peeking through a hole at us.
And again, there's no concern for safety issues here, okay? No concern for safety issues here at all. But then you go into the area with that 1982 attack, or that abandoned campground that we took Alex into, they shut that off, and we found evidence where they bulldozed everything. Even the shed where you'd buy ice at, because we found the sign. And we found a little bit of the remnants of wood, and we're like, they brought a bulldozer in here and bulldozed the shed you buy ice from for safety reasons, supposedly. But this is just allowed to like rot away at that point. So it just seems like it's an odd distribution of their resources for a place that's supposedly so broke to spend a good chunk of change making some of these areas just kind of unaccessible.
And non-existent.
Yeah, non-existent, almost like to erase just the very existence of them off the map. So what happened is I think that during the crossover from the Tennessee Valley Authority to the Forest Service inherited a lot of this stuff. And as much as people resented the Tennessee Valley Authority just for the land seizure, it seems like there was some sort of development taking place under the TVA. And then when the actual federal government took it over, Forestry Service, all of that just stopped. It just looks like basically everything just stopped the day it took over.
This is a bone we found the other day when we were out here scouting. But we found a ton of these. The first time we came out here, we found just a trail of bones like this all the way going up to Station 16. This is the only one we found the other day. Bones. There's more bones up here. There's bones all over up here. Look. Look at that. There are just bones that are picked clean all over here. There's another one. So up on top of the hill is an old water pumping station, and there's cisterns up there, but we went up there, we've looked inside, we found a trail of bones leading from down here all the way up to that water pumping station, and actually inside the entrance to one of those tunnels, we found a pile of bones. Well, we filmed that, we put it on our channel, and then came back, and all of that stuff was cleaned up.
Yep.
There was not a single bone laying anywhere. So that's part of that weird thing about the LVL is you go to a location, you talk about it or put it out there, and then you come back and all the evidence is gone. Luckily, we filmed all of that.
Look, right there.
Oh my God.
It's a trail of bones coming up to this building on top of the hill.
This one's not on. Something not on it here.
Yep. And when we came through, it was extremely apparent. We found everything. Hog bones, deer, coyote. We found some sort of bovine bones. Now the only real bovines are the bison that are in the enclosure several miles away from here. So how one of them would end up all the way here dead and its bones scattered, there's no clue whatsoever.
Yeah.
The amount of bones that we found back here and the quickness with which they disappeared, there's no way that those were just broken down that quickly just by natural methods. So, and it was weird. We didn't know if it was something conspiratorial going on or what happened with it. But we followed a trail all the way up to this little shack. The door was shut, there were bones outside. We pushed the door open.
There's bones inside.
More bones inside.
Some of them are really thick, like he said, bovine bones, and they were broken. They weren't sawed in half, they were broken. Something with an immense amount of strength just broke them.
And a thumb broke it. And there's a little entrance down into the water system. And at the bottom of it, there were bones, broken bones, and all of that. And the only way you can really get in and out of there is to climb. So we were like, okay, if it's coyotes up here doing this, how is the coyote getting down into this hole, into this tunnel, and then back out? We could never figure it out at that point. So we went around, there were bones all over the hill, but there was just definitely a greater number just here in a line. And it was just creepy as all get out. We're even going, did somebody just put these bones here? You know, did somebody a person purposely place them here just to make a trail? Because it was so noticeable at that point. We didn't do a lot of scouting when we were here the other day, so I'm sure there's some more around through here, but you could literally just stand here and go, all right, another bone, another set of bones, and just follow it all the way up to the shack. So this was an old well house or pumping station for the work camp that was here. And one of the gentlemen that contacted us, telling us about the dark figures that they were seeing on the shoreline that were just much larger than black bear, he had said that they had seen them on both sides of the shore. And I'm like, what do you think they're doing? Are they swimming back and forth? And he was like, no, I think there's tunnels that go underneath from the mainland onto the peninsula. To me, that seemed like a little bit of, you know.
That's a bit of a stretch.
Bit of a stretch. But then we did get out here and find openings into the ground. Now this I just think goes through here, but we have found like pipes that go in the ground and all that. So nothing that's really led us to believe that there's tunnels here, but there was definitely stuff going on underground here as far as like piping and whatnot. So there may be some sort of remnant of that deeper that possibly, I can't rule it out, that might actually stretch over to the mainland at this point.
There's a bone right here in the doorway that was not here when we were here the other day.
No way. No freaking way.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
closed the door.
We live streamed from here the other day.
Yeah.
So we put a live video out because you've got signal right here on top of the hill. We had our soul booster put up over there to magnify it. And when we came here the first time, there were bones here, and then we opened the door and then there were bones inside.
Yeah.
And we were here yesterday live streaming and there was no bones inside whatsoever, so.
Yeah. And that's broken too.
Let me slide past you. Is there anything else like that's in here?
Don't know. There you go.
Wild. All right, that is wild.
What's going on?
No, just the fact that there's a bone in there, like inside the door. This goes down, you can see it, it goes down, I don't know, about 5-6 feet. And there's a big chamber under this hilltop that we're in. So when we came in, we found bones here, and then there were bones down into this that looked like something had been feeding. And you can see there's no way to get in and out of that unless you have hands to kind of climb in and out. And I was going, all right, did a coyote fall down in there, maybe with some prey? It was stuck down there. No coyote bones, just small animal bones, deer bones, everything like that. So.
But a pile of them were down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you been down there yourselves?
Barton Dudley jumped down there, actually. We were going to put we weren't sure. We thought it might lead into like a tunnel system or a piping system or something. It was just the two of us. So at that point, if I climb down, she can't help me get out. So we came up here with a group of people, and Barton.
And I'm way too short to get out of there.
Yeah, so we sent Barton down. Actually, when I say we sent Barton down, he just jumped down when nobody was paying attention. And it's just a big cavernous room that's down there, just filled with just minor debris. Mostly it's just what you're seeing right here, just a few leaves and whatnot. I think it was like a water reservoir or something at one time, but something was using it to den down and feed down there.
Yeah.
And again, that was the first thing we asked him. Did you see like a coyote skeleton? Did a coyote fall down there? And he goes, no, nothing at all. And all those bones disappeared as well when everything else around here just kind of went clean at that point. So.
That's.
I feel like I can jump in and out.
You want to pop down in there? We'll help you climb out. So.
I kind of do.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's do this. Hopefully there's nothing down there right now.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. Sick. Ew.
Yeah.
Oh. But it doesn't look, oh, there's a shit ton of mosquitoes down here.
Oh, God.
Oh, Lord. Hold on. I don't want to be under there now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you can see though, you can get up and down with a little bit of difficulty. A coyote couldn't get in and out of there. Okay.
Yeah.
A bear, even if there were black bear around this area, a bear couldn't get in and out of there. You need hands, you need to be able to climb up and down from there.
Yeah.
And we thought possibly, before we got in, that maybe there was a tunnel kind of leading out and there was another entrance somewhere. And that's how maybe coyotes were coming in and out of that area. But no, that's the only one way in and out. So whatever was getting down there and feeding was able to kind of go down there, take shelter, feed, and then get back out.
Wow.
When we were here the first time, These metal roofs were pretty solidly on, and when we came back this week, this was ripped up and...
But this is an access.
You can get down to some controls that are in there. But again, what we thought was weird is the guy told us, I think there's tunnels or there's some sort of piping underneath that these things are using to move from the peninsula onto the mainland. And we just thought that was crazy. It was impossible to happen.
But there's an existing infrastructure here.
That could possibly, you know, we may not have stumbled across it yet, but there could actually be some sort of connection between the peninsula and the mainland that goes underwater. So, listen, it may just end right here, I don't know, but the guy's going, there's tunnels that go underground, and then all of a sudden we're finding entrances that lead into the ground, and I'm going, there might be something we haven't come across yet.
It's not hard evidence, but it leans in that direction.
Yeah, it doesn't seem as impossible as it seemed like before we stumbled across this.
Yeah.
So.
We'll take you down the hill in a second, and we'll go
Yeah.
to the environmental monitoring station that's been shut down.
You find a lot of bones, and so we've got a lot of eagles, a lot of osprey, a lot of fish-eating birds, but you'll find every once in a while some big fish on the bank. Now, there's a lot of bow fishermen, and there's a lot of people that just get them and shoot them and throw them up there. You can kind of tell when a carcass has been eaten and when it's just died, and I have found that. I would say deer are probably their main source of meat. I don't know if they also are eating, you know, vegetation and berries and things like that. And there's plenty of those. Probably one of my most productive areas. There was a line of blackberries. I mean, it's a mile long. It was a mile long. It was really a neat little spot. But yeah, I would say deer are their main source. Hunters don't leave the bones. You know, they're taking them with them. A lot of times at a predator like a coyote kill or something, they'll be scattered out. You can see them gnawed on. But you'll find these that have been snapped. They've been snapped in half. Usually leg bone. So, yeah.
We've come back here several times since then and experienced a lot of weird stuff. We've done investigations here at night, and one night we were out here and all of our equipment just started malfunctioning. Everything started draining. We ended up having to get out of here with this light.
Flashlight.
That was the only thing we had left. It fried a bunch of the batteries that we had. We had to throw away a bunch of rechargeable batteries because they just got completely fried. And my full spectrum camera that I use out here just continually malfunctioned. I could not record hardly anything.
With that, I mean, we started off with headlamps. The headlamp batteries drained. We carry spares, we put those in, those drained extremely quickly. Our regular flashlights went through the primary battery and then the secondary batteries. Our primary camera went down. We were using a small little full spectrum action camera that was on a big battery backup. That's the only reason why that was still working. So we literally navigated out with that, and then this was the only light we had working. And like Jesse said, usually we're very meticulous as far as recharging stuff. We start recharging stuff, you know, the moment we get back. And a lot of those batteries would just never hold a charge again. I had to pitch them and just replace all of them.
There's a lot of granite. There's a quarry at the north end near Grand Rivers. It's Vulcan Materials. They are quarrying out granite up there. There's a lot of granite. And then of course you've got the hematite iron ore. So it's a very mineral rich environment. But it's not like a lot of places where we go. We go places where there's, you know, we're in the southern Appalachian region, western North Carolina, North Georgia. We get a lot of quartz in places where we're at, which has its own like electric frequency and it's a good conductor of energy. You don't have that here. It's almost like this is like Fort Knox of energy. It doesn't conduct it, it just keeps it, you know? It's bounded by a lot of granite. If you look at any of the missing 411 stuff, granite boulder fields is where a lot of people end up just going missing. But there's a lot of granite that kind of surrounds the LBL, and then you've got all the iron that was here. So it's almost like it's a wall of granite around what used to have a ton of iron, but now it's completely unprotected. Here you go.
Now, well, there's a lot of helicopter traffic through here, but you usually get the real low flying ones over certain areas, and this is one of them.
So if we get a helicopter above us, I can look on the flight tracker or the flight radar and see who owns the chopper. And sometimes we get on here and they're supposed to be registered. If they're in the air, they're supposed to be registered and they're supposed to be on here, and they are not. Even if it's a hidden name of the owner, if it's a private name that they don't want to share on here, it still has to track the flight pattern, and it still has to track that it's up in the air. But that's not tracking at all. So a big story about the 1982 massacre site, you hear about these bunkers, you hear about, and you can see them when you go up there. We think those are rainwater cisterns. After looking at similar areas and actually seeing a previously working farm that's actually intact on the peninsula, there's a rainwater cistern behind it. It's the same dimensions, same building materials as what we've found over at the bunker site. So we think that those are mostly rainwater cisterns. Some of them could be other things, but we think they're rainwater cisterns.
We were down here though, and we came across this shelter over here, and I'm going, all right, the ones on the north end, you can see what they were used for. Foundations of old buildings, rainwater cisterns. The ones that are close down there with the doorway, probably used storage of some type. Over here, the thing that we found over here is the first thing we found that legit looks like something that people would use for like emergency shelter at that point.
Like we've mentioned before, we've had to evolve our theories on this place over and over again and reconsider what we think is real and what's not real. We came back over here, we started doing an investigation over here, and we found what appears to be, it almost looks like an above ground safe room, like panic room. So that's what this is over here. So we'll take you over here to check it out.
And we've had people tell us that it's dynamite storage, but we've looked up what the Tennessee Valley Authority used for dynamite storages. They're kind of rounded buildings. They look nothing like this at all. Other people have gone, oh, it's a tornado shelter. And tornadoes do hit this area before, but you would think that there would be more of these across the peninsula if they were tornado shelters. There's other Tennessee Valley camps that we've seen that don't have these. It's just reinforced steel and concrete. It had power to it. Looks like it had water once upon a time. You can see where a door was hooked in here at one point with these like indentations along here. We think we found the door in one of these buildings up here. Oh, really? That went into it. Yeah, that looks like about the size that you would expect. Oh. Yeah, reinforced concrete. Shelving in here. It looks like water was ran in. There was obviously a light. But again, here, we came here because the guy was telling us, hey, we're seeing shapes, there's tunnels, and then again, there's more things like going into the ground here that have just filled in over the years. Yeah, well again, like I said, he said tunnels, and we immediately just went, all right, we're gonna go check out the sighting, but the tunnels just sound like an invention, you know? But then we came here going, all right, there's openings going into the ground on this side. I don't think it stretches all the way to the far shore, but I can't say for certain, you know what I'm saying?
At least it's just weird to find the hint of evidence of that after all of this.
But you can actually tell from here, there's homes over through there, so if there ever was anything, it's been long covered up at that point, so. Or if it is in existence, it's hidden, nobody's gonna see it, but we've gone over through there before and even talked to people. Have you ever seen any tunnels or strange pits? Nothing at all, so.
Get off my property.
Get off my property, so. But anyway, like I was saying, you constantly hear about bunkers. We look at them and go, there's a logical explanation for what we're seeing here. This is the first one that we've looked at and we've gone, now this looks like a bunker. This looks like something that people could possibly run into as a last resort, lock themselves in and just be safe. You saw the metal poking out where the tree hit. That's reinforced concrete. That was built to be extremely durable and extremely strong, so.
So this is an environmental monitoring station. We only figured out that by looking at the signs that are, I don't even know if they're still attached to the fence down here, but this is very strange to us. This is the only place we found in the LBL that has fencing and barbed wire all around the top to protect it, to keep something out. So this is the only place we found down here that has this kind of MO.
Somebody reached out to us when we put this first video out and said that, and again, this is just the information that they gave us, to me it doesn't seem very logical, but we'll share it, that they had some of these stations dotted around the LBL to keep an eye on the unnatural population of these creatures like Bigfoot, Dogman, or whatnot. And that they used this to kind of like as a tracking station, and then the concrete bunker was somewhere that they would run to as a safety of last resort. To me, it seems like that'd be closer. You know, you wouldn't want to run across this. So I don't think that's true, but somebody reached out to us just instantly going, let me tell you what those buildings are that you found. So yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. And you're gonna see power poles through here. We'll have to see if we can look, but electricity used to run down through here. They've cut some of them off. Others are still there. It's like they just kind of stopped halfway through for whatever reason. Just like up here, it just looks like they just kind of like left, like walked away with stuff that would probably still be useful. So.
We're going to do a real tick check. Come take a little look-see over here. Door's unlocked.
Let's go.
Here.
Well, I'll do it.
Nah, we'll get it, so.
It looks cooler when you guys do it.
All right, don't breathe too much in here because you're going to have, yeah, got a lot of airborne nasties in here.
And check it out, these fences are not that tall. You would think that, let's just have some conjecture that if this was like a area to like monitor Dogman or Bigfoot, you'd think these fences would be 12 feet tall at this point. So I don't know why, but again, this is the only place we've ever seen barbed wire protecting any of these old buildings or anything, so.
Although not much of the actual use of the trailer can be deduced from what was left behind. It is interesting to note how the modern mythos of a government cover-up becomes the first assumed explanation for its existence. The phenomena of both Dogman and Sasquatch are pervasive throughout the LBL, and when coupled with the almost complete abandonment of the area, it is no wonder so many people draw a connection between the two. However, no amount of theorizing can definitively prove why so many of these places were left to decay. But one thing is certain: people's experiences with the unknown persist.
Most prominent thing I've had happen to me down here was getting bluff charged, which if I had to guess, I think that might have been more something of a Dogman nature. But I have found Sasquatch footprints down here before, and my family have had things happen down here before, which seemed to be more Sasquatch in nature, which I was not present for, unfortunately. My dad, back in 2010 to 2013, in that time frame, he went down to a little cemetery called Wallace Cemetery, and he was down there in the middle of the night, and he blew on a silent dog whistle, which it got us a completely different reaction down there as opposed to where we got bluff charged. But he was down there blowing on this thing, and he said it sounded like something blowing air through big, flat, human-like teeth going like trying to whistle back at the whistle. So he'd take a puff on the whistle, and this thing would reply to him from out of the woods, and it would go back and forth like that. And a few nights later, they went back to that specific cemetery, and before they even got out and started blowing on the whistle, this thing was still there, and it started making that sound again like it was curious, wanting them to bring the whistle back out. And that seems like more of a Sasquatch trait than anything, and that was actually where we found that footprint. It was this cemetery, it's way off in the woods, and there's kind of a trail that adjoins the cemetery that goes down to the water's edge, and we found that footprint down in that area.
I haven't had a daylight sighting out here. I've caught a couple of things on thermal, but Shelley Reed had a daylight sighting. Her and Larry Porch, they were riding behind us. I was in another vehicle, and it was the opening day of the juvenile turkey hunt. So we kind of figured that that's what happened. There was a truck that was parked nearby, and maybe the father and son were moving around and kind of spooked the booger, and the booger had to cross a field. And just as they were driving by, Shelley was able to see him and got a good description of him. She did really good on trying to debunk what she saw. And as far as going and looking at the topo maps and doing with the rangefinder and getting a size from it. And she said this one was red, real pretty red, like an Irish setter, and had long hair.
For some, these experiences are enough to assume lives of self-censure, never speaking of the event again, for either fear of ridicule or fear of acknowledging that such an event could have happened to them. For still others, brushes with the unknown can lead to vigorous pursuits to learn more.
You know, we went home and I called Charlie Raymond with Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization. Man, he helped me out. You know, because I wanted to know. You know, you have that moment. He answered the phone about 11:30 at night, and he took a report. It's posted on his YouTube site, and but they were gracious enough to take me out with them and do the follow-up and the investigation. And then I kind of got into it, you know, because I wanted to know if I'm not going to not be in the woods. And I don't honestly think it wanted to hurt us or it was trying to hurt us. I don't think they're generally mean. Because I tell you what, they move so quick. If they wanted people, they would get people. It's just amazing when you see the woods a whole different way. You know, I'd been there my whole life. And so I wanted to go in. Now, I don't go at night. I've been a few times with other people. They run these expeditions a little bit. But if I'm by myself, I don't go at night. I don't call and whoop a lot because I don't know what I'm saying. We started going out and just hiking around and then looking for prints. And I initially started, well, like this is out here, you know, when the water goes down, you can get out on these bays and it's flat, and I was looking for that beautiful toes, line of tracks, perfect thing. They don't want to be seen, and I don't think they're really going to be there in those spaces a lot. So I had to go off the trail, and they follow creeks a lot. So we started finding, I mean, it's common. I've got over 200 pictures. There's a 16-inch by 8-inch. There's an area where that's going to be your size that you find. We found some 15 inches and some 13 inches. It's a pretty wide area. I mean, several miles that we've hiked and covered. But you know, the cool thing is you find this stuff and you have to open your mind, because there's nobody out there barefoot walking around where I'm going, tricking people with a 16-inch foot. So yeah, it's neat. They leave glyphs, a lot of stick markers for navigation, tree structures. You can tell some of them have been woven. A lot of times, I mean, you'll see the sticks woven together. There's no way, you'll look up, there's no way they could have fallen there. They leave X's a lot, and it's really common, you know, 2 sticks can fall in an X. But a lot of times, and I've got pictures of one, it'll be perfectly centered. So the X will be perfectly centered, and every offshoot will be 24 inches, say. You know, it's perfectly symmetrical. So you just, and when you start looking for it, it's pretty common if you're in the right spot, because I don't know if it's just artwork. I don't know if it's like I say, if it's navigation. Charlie tends to think that it's where they're marking trails and there's some kind of meaning behind a lot of it. It's one of those things you just have to see. Yeah, you know, I understand the skepticism, but when you go out there, I was as skeptical as any of them, and but now it's a real thing. Okay, and that's the thing. You will find where they're kind of broken and twisted. Yes, not in the sense of a whole tree. I'm finding branches, and again, I've got some pictures. you'll find a lot of branches. You gotta look high for those. You know, it's funny, we start looking, you know, I'm 5'8", so I'm thinking that you know, grass this high is rough, and sticks that are this here, it's rough. But then when you realize these things are a little taller, a little wider, you look up, you can actually see. And then you start looking, and you're like, what would reach up 8 feet and twist a branch off and move it? And then you'll see 4 or 5 of those, and you're like, that's like somebody was making a path 8 feet in the air. You know, so I'm fortunate that I have been able to deal with it and learn about it. And you know, like I said, the woods has been a part of my life. I'm not coming. It takes something really, really bad to get me to not go in the woods. So, but I've got to be, I'm not going to lie to myself. I've got to be knowledgeable about what's out there. And again, finding somebody that knew about this, like I say, Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization for me, and the founder, Charlie Raymond, man, he just, he calms you down. He calms you down because you initially, yes, they're a big killer thing. I think, so I was an Army brat. My dad was actually one of the first members of Delta Force. So it's Special Forces. I was born on Fort Bragg. I lived in D.C. He was at the Pentagon. And there's a different mindset that comes with that I didn't serve, but I was raised that way. So it was pretty practical. And I think once I had time to realize if these things had wanted to get us, they would have had us, period, the end. So I don't think if they were that close, and in fact, I think they smelled the hot dogs we were cooking that first day and were lured to it, and I think when they saw it was people, they were just saying, I think one was knocking to the other one saying, hey, chill out, there's just people down there. And then when I think I knocked, the other one responded. I think I got between two communicating. But I know for a fact, had they wanted to do us harm, they would have. Once I was able to come to grips with that, I got more curious. And then when you go out and you realize, well, they've been here my whole life. There's no telling, like I say, I'm a firm believer now, if you're in LBL, in 90% of those spots, if you're off the road somewhere, you're being watched. It's just, that's how it is. And it had been that way since 1988 when I first started running around there. So, but it took a little bit. It was several months before we could get back out, and I had to, come to grips with it. The coolest and scariest thing, we were in the boat, and this is years later, it's been last year, in the back of a bay, almost dark, fishing, and I just wanted to show the girls. We had been hearing people partying and whatever on their boats, and the sounds were echoing. So I'd been telling my girls, that this is what an echo is. So it's almost dark, and I just go, whoo, really loud. Right behind us, you hear whoop, and you hear the P sound. So we knew what that was. And the coyotes start going and everything. But then up on this hill, all of a sudden you hear this, and the crickets stopped. I mean, everything got quiet. And we all looked at each other, and we went on. So that was creepy.
So Land Between the Lakes, it's like over 170,000 acres. And when you drive into the park, you'll quickly see that there's plenty of nature to hide one of these things. Because I think it's 40 miles from bottom to top, and it's nothing but woods on the sides of the road as you're going down. There's plenty of room for something to hide and almost never be seen.
I think LBL is a great place to research. I used to work a lot of hours, and I worked swing shift. It's kind of odd. I got sick and went into a coma. It took about 6 months to heal. After I was healed, I realized that there was more than life than working. I had an interest in Bigfoot, and I expressed to one of my team members, Shelly Reed, what my interest was, and we started looking around for places that we could go. And we went to a couple of Bigfoot conferences, and then we started coming out here to LBL. A feller by the name of Mike McSwain lives near here and spent his whole life hunting. And so he was in a Bigfoot group and had a sighting out here. So he kind of took me under his wing and then started showing me around. Larry came on the scene about a year later, and we started coming up here and doing a lot of primitive camping. One of the things that I first started off with was setting out recorders. I would look at topo maps and look for places that really look good. And we would go out and set out recorders out there and then review them, and then it would tell us that this is an area that we need to search in. And then we started doing a lot of primitive camping and just get a couple of miles off any of the roads and see what kind of activity was having. We've had, over the years we have learned, we've got a lot of honey holes out here, and we get a lot of responses from making calls. If we capture any kind of audio, we can throw it on a spectrogram, and you can tell the difference in between a coyote, a human, or what we believe is a Bigfoot. David Ellis has really been helpful with us. And we've been able to talk shop and swap notes. This community, it's really good when you come across good people that are willing to help you, and you can share notes.
If you ever go to LBL, it's surrounded by two huge lakes, Lake Barkley, Kentucky Lake. There's kind of maybe 2 or 3 ways to get into it, but then you're on an island. You're kind of vulnerable. You're at the mercy of whatever lives there. I've taken people there at night, and they get creeped out immediately when they enter that area. Fact is, when we interviewed that witness, we went there that night and we made a fire, and immediately we had tree knocks and strange howls, which I recorded that night near where his sighting was. So I'm pretty sure they're in there still. But again, the best way to have a sighting, just go in there, make a fire, laugh, play music, just kind of be non-threatening, be curious, because they like to kind of observe us, and then you might get lucky and have an encounter or record audio. Hopefully not with the dogman though.
The land between the lakes is host to a variety of strange phenomena, Sasquatch being one of the least perplexing. The land itself has a long and troublesome history, which will be explored further in future installments, soaking the land in resentment and anger. Could it be possible that these feelings experienced by so many people could manifest some sort of creature as a sort of defense mechanism against an overreaching power? There might not be a simple solution to a mystery so incredibly complex. The presence of strange creatures is a certainty in the minds of those who live and research the land between the lakes, and their thoughts on what happens there are as strange and unbelievable as the creatures they pursue.